Welcome everyone, welcome to this, I think, third session of Linnean Lens at the Linnean Society of London. Today with us we have Luke Thorne, our assistant archivist, who will be presenting on Peter Collinson's Commonplace book, which he has recently catalogued. Just a few housekeeping notes before I hand over to Luke. If you have a question, please put it in the Q&A. This is easier for us to look through the questions rather than the chat, but please do use the chat if you have a comment and not a question. And I think that's it. So Luke will be presenting for 20 minutes, half an hour, and then we'll take questions from the audience. Over to you, Luke.
All right, thank you, Isabel. So I'm just going to start sharing my screen. Okay, can we all see this presentation slide?
Yes, but I think you've turned your camera off. If you want to put it back on.
Okay.
Just so that...
Let me see if I can do that. Oops, sorry. Get rid of this.
That's it.
Right, sorry about that. There we go. Okay. Yes, hello everyone. So I'm Luke, I'm the assistant archivist at the Linnean Society, and today I'm going to be talking about Peter Collinson's Commonplace books, which I think serve as fascinating insights into who Peter Collinson was and the kinds of things that he was interested in collecting. So the way that this talk is going to work is that I'm going to give a brief introduction to who Peter Collinson was and what he used his Commonplace books for, and then I'm going to show you some of the pages that I've picked out that I think are really interesting and worth talking about. So I'm going to make a start on my presentation. So who was Peter Collinson? So Peter Collinson was born in London on the 28th of January 1694. He came from a family of Quakers and cloth merchants, and he possessed a passion for gardening from an early age, which he got from his grandmother, who he spent a lot of time with in his childhood. However, he followed in his father's footsteps and became a cloth merchant, and it was through this occupation that he developed many trading links and professional relationships, which in turn allowed him to cultivate his passion for botany by gaining access to new species of plants and trees, as well as being able to support the research of other botanists and scientists he befriended. He corresponded with many scientists and naturalists such as Carl Linnaeus, Benjamin Franklin, John Bartram, and Mark Catesby, as well as many members of the nobility, including the 8th and 9th Lords Petre, the Earls of Jersey and Bute, and the Dukes of Richmond. And one of the terms that was used to describe him, which I rather liked, was calling him a middleman for the international exchange of scientific ideas, and this was particularly the case in the transatlantic world. In fact, it's through Collinson's plant dealing efforts that many new species of plants and trees were imported from America and introduced to English gardens, which in turn led to the emergence of American-styled gardens throughout England, which was a trend that lasted until the 20th century.
Luke, can I just interrupt just a second? Padma, is the sound working? I saw there's a chat saying...
Yeah, I have no problem. I can hear.
Me too. And
apologies,
just the
I
other
can't
thing,
see the chat from here.
No, yeah, that's fine. That's why I interrupted you. Sorry, Luke. And the other thing, can you just press hide on the little bar?
Oh yes, sorry.
That's it. That was the other comment. That's it. Go on. Thank you.
Right.
Sorry.
No worries. Thank you. No, this is my first time doing it, so there may well be a few technical issues, but I think we've worked most of them out. So what is a commonplace book? The term commonplace originates from the Latin term locus communis, referring to a general or common topic. So a commonplace book essentially was used like an informational scrapbook in which people would compile knowledge and record information and writings such as proverbs, sayings, quotes, letters, poems, recipes, and other bits of useful information. So in Collinson's case, he used his books to do all of these things, but to also keep track of his imports and exports, and writing down various musings, copying text that he read, and using his books to keep correspondences he received from friends and associates. So in fact, you'll find in these books that Collinson had varied interests and a real love of learning. So some of the things he collected extend beyond the world of natural history to subjects like archaeology, physics, literature, astronomy, and architecture. And what you can see on this slide is a plethora of the types of documents Collinson kept in his books. Some of these we'll be taking a closer look at in a moment. So this is what the Commonplace book currently looks like. The books themselves were at one stage all bound into individual volumes, but they have been removed and now kept in these archival boxes, and each page has essentially been put into a plastic Melanex sheet to protect it. And we also have like a sort of built-in ring binder into the archival boxes, so you can essentially turn it as you would like a book. And I should also say as well that the first book consists of 178 pages, while the second has 327. And these pages kind of vary somewhat in how big they are. You know, sometimes you can have a very small snippets like a newspaper cutting, for example, or like a really long sort of A4 piece of paper. One of the challenges I faced in cataloguing these pages is having to read different types of handwriting, which really put my paleography skills to the test. And Collinson can sometimes be difficult to read because of the lack of capitalization and punctuation in his sentences. I also learned as well while cataloguing these books that Quakers had an aversion to using the names of days and months because of their pagan origins. So they resorted to writing something like the first day or the first month and then the year. Collinson doesn't appear to completely follow this rule in his letters, but I think maybe he had a slightly more relaxed approach to this, but I will be able to show you some examples of this in a moment. So I think with that, we should start taking a look at some of the pages from his book. So just going to change the camera. Okay, can we see this all right?
No, I think you need to, yeah, but I think you need to stop sharing.
Oh, I need to stop sharing, right? Yeah. Has that worked now?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Good.
fine.
All right. Great. So this first item then, I'm going to show you. Just check that that's okay. Yeah. So the first thing I wanted to show you is a letter that was sent to Peter Collinson from Israel Pemberton and John Kinsey at the Public School of Philadelphia, thanking him for a donation he made to the school library. And you can see at the top here that they address him as an esteemed friend, and basically saying that they're very grateful for his contribution, which consisted of 193 books and 11 pamphlets. And enclosed in this letter is a copy of some of the minutes from a meeting of the overseers accepting Collinson's donation. So I'm just going to give you a bit of a close-up with this and show you the sort of style of writing as well, which I think is just a fantastic piece of handwriting to look at. And also inside we have a copy of the minutes as well from the public school, just saying that they accepted Peter Collinson's donation and that they were very grateful for his donation. So there's also with this a catalogue of books. So this is basically the list of all the books that Collinson had sent them, and many of the titles are about religion and philosophy, but there's also some classical text as well as books on the natural world. So I'll just quickly show you as well inside here. Okay, let me see what I got to on here. So I just went into my notes. So I think that, yeah, this letter is really just an example of fantastic looking handwriting, and it's written in copperplate script, which is so called because the writing was transferred by an engraver onto a plate made from copper, and the printed sheets were made using the plate. But there were later methods involved using a sharp pointed nib instead of a flat nib on a pen to create the same style of calligraphy. And I think the latter method has been used to create this letter, which is really impressive and is indicative of the school's appreciation. And I can also show you on the reverse side of the letter, you might recognize this, but this was one of the images we used to promote this talk as well. So it's just an address to Peter Collinson. So that's the first item that I was going to show you. If you just bear with me, I'm just going to get the second item out of its plastic sheet. Okay. Is that in focus? Just see if that's looking okay. So the next item that I wanted to show you is a building plan and designs for a greenhouse that Peter Collinson wanted built to house his plants and trees. And it's a bit difficult to make out, but at the very top of the page, it says, let's see if I get this right, a house less than this is not worth building, for it will not answer the purposes intended. And so Collinson basically gave very specific instructions about how the building was to be structured. So you can see on here, there's very specific details about the material as well as measurements for this greenhouse. So let me see. The house basically had 1 foot of brickwork running along the sort of foundation of the building, and then the walls themselves measured about 4 foot and alternated between woodwork. So you can see here 4 foot of woodwork to then glass panels. And similarly on the roof, which also had alternating panels measuring between 5.5 to 6.5 feet. And this actually opens up as well. There's more information and instructions inside. So on the inside of the page are further instructions about constructing multiple floors in the greenhouse and where to place different flowering plants. So you can see in this drawing here, there's basically different floors and how, well, in these instructions, he would detail about where exactly he wanted to place different plants. So Collinson also incorporated what looks like an underfloor fireplace into his design, which you can just see here. And this allowed heat to enter the greenhouse. And there was also room for a chimney with a chimney register, which you can just see here. And essentially, I didn't know what a chimney register was, so I had to look this up, but I found that it's basically an iron plate that was used to prevent heat from escaping, as well as preventing debris from falling into the fireplace. And if I just show you down here as well, there's a copy of Peter Collinson's signature. So, oh, hang on, I might have to just adjust my camera slightly. Just bear with me. There we go. I'll just bring this a little bit closer so you can see. Oh, that's not, hang on. Sorry about this. Just try and get a zoom up of, there you go, just in the corner there is his signature. So I'm just going to move on to the next item now. Just bear with me. Sorry, I need to get this out of its plastic sleeve as well. There's actually a couple of items that I'm going to show you. So let me just move this round here. Okay, so this next item was something that I really wasn't expecting to find in the book when I was cataloguing it. It's a lock of human hair, which belonged to Richard Beecham, who was the 13th Earl of Warwick. So Beecham was a medieval nobleman and a military commander, and part of his royal duties required him to travel between England and Normandy regularly. And I also learned that he was the acting superintendent for the trial of Joan of Arc. He was alive between 1382 and 1439, and this lock was recovered from his tomb in 1729, making it nearly 300 years old when it was found. But for us, it's significantly older, but I think it's remarkable that it has remained in such great condition. In fact, I'll move it slightly closer to the camera so you can get a better look at it. That's the lock of his hair. And we've also got an attached, oh, sorry, we've got this attached notes as well, just explaining what it is, which was probably entered by an earlier archivist and has just remained with the lock. So accompanying this as well, there's a manuscript which is basically was written out by Peter Collinson, and it appears to be a notice or a proclamation of Richard's death. And I think that Collinson likely copied this down from the original record and has kept it in his book. And it basically explains who Richard was and how he died. And it says, if I can find the right section of text, yes, so he was visited with long sickness in the castle of Rhone, which is in Normandy. And Collinson also notes at the bottom here that the tomb, the reason that he's got this lock of hair is that the tomb needed repairs due to decay and mold, and this basically had caused the skull of Richard to be exposed. And as the men were repairing the tomb, they found that the hair on the skull was in very pristine condition, and so a lock was cut or pulled off and eventually found its way to Collinson. I'm just going to move these. In fact, I'll show you a quick zoom in as well of this actually, so you can get a good look at this manuscript. So just bear with me, I'll just show you this one. So I thought this was quite a touching piece, and on a, oh, thank you, Will. Easy to focus that. Okay. So I thought this was a very touching personal note made by Peter Collinson, in which he reflects on the natural world and his life. And the passage that he wrote out reads as follows. It is a comfort to us in our solitudes that we are never alone. The marvelous things below and above always accompany us, leading through the most entertaining gradations up to the great author of them. How our little faculties are lost in rapturous admiration at the inconceivable perfection, wisdom, and power of the deity. Through mercy, I enjoy perfect health. A blessing so desirable makes my heart overflow with thankfulness. So I think that this passage really encapsulates how Collinson was both a man of faith and a man of science, and he reflected the best of both in his love of life and love of learning. And you can see at the bottom of the page as well that Peter, oh, I'm really sorry. I've actually had the wrong page up. I'm very sorry about that. Let me just rotate that round. Sorry, yes, this was the passage that I just read out. And as you can see here, this is Collinson's signature again that he's just written. So I think that's basically my talk for now. There was one other item that I'd also brought out in case I'd finished a bit earlier, which I appear to have done. So I can show you that very quickly as well. So one of the things that we've been thinking about in our archival collections is the role that indigenous groups of people have played in terms of how they've contributed to our archives. And Collinson, because of his involvement with transatlantic trade, had an interest in the events that were going on in America, and particularly between Native American tribes and colonialists as well, who had settled there. And he's at various points in his book reports on the interactions between these two groups. And this particular document is essentially about an attempt to sort of negotiate peace between the Native American Indians and the colonists. So I'll just read this first section of text here for you. As the setting and encroaching on Indian lands and property not yielded to the English by treaty have been the principal foundation of Indian quarrel and complaints, and the cause of cruel reprisals, to such our legal practices to prevent such a great calamity for the future, and be a means of establishing a lasting peace and friendship with the Indians. So what's quite interesting with Collinson is that he reports on a lot of the interactions between Native Americans and the colonialists, and there's other documents in the book which talk about some of the massacres that happened between these two groups, as well as some general descriptions of Native Americans in terms of like their diet. So he was commented on the fact that they eat a lot of fish and a lot of maize. And generally, I think, Collinson was always sort of concerned about ensuring that the relations between these two groups would always would go very well, and try to avoid violent and aggressive attacks between these two groups. So I think I'm going to finish it there. Thank you all for attending my talk, and I hope you enjoyed it. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Luke. Thank you for this. There is one comment on the chat in the Q&A. I'll let you, that's it, stop your camera around. Thank you. If anyone has a question, please put it in the Q&A, or you can also raise your hand, and Padma, our events and communications manager, who's in the background, can unmute you to ask your question directly. So the question in the chat, and maybe we'll have to go back to the camera actually, is from Ray Heaton.
Okay, yeah.
Hello, Ray. I don't know yet. Hang on. I feel that the floors in the greenhouse would have been shelves for the plants due to the scale of drawing. It's more of a comment than...
Yeah, well, interestingly, he uses the term floors, but it's spelt differently. Let me just get that out again, actually, and we can have another look. So to be fair, it's a good point. You know, I wondered if it might have been shelves, but he uses the term floors, so I'm not entirely sure. Let's have a look. See if I can zoom in a little bit. But he starts talking. Sorry, just bear with me. Let's see. Yeah, it's a little bit faded to sort of read, but it's spelt F-L-A-W, which sounds like, you know, a flaw isn't a character flaw, but the term comes up a lot, so you can see it here as well. I don't know if that's showing up, F-L-A-W.
Yeah, kind of,
yeah,
bit, yeah.
So, I mean, it could very well be that was the term used to describe them as shelves. Admittedly, there's no description of stairs, so perhaps it would be more accurate to describe them as shelves rather than floors. But I kind of went, I was using what I saw in the documents and thought that might refer to different floors. But yeah, admittedly, I don't know how you would access the other areas or the other shelves of the greenhouse. So that's probably a good point. Actually, they probably are realistically more shelves than they are floors.
The Linnean lens is always quite interesting, but because it always focuses on some of our archival holdings, and any comment sometimes can be actually very fruitful for our archive catalogue. So okay, there's two questions by Malvin Mitchell. One of those is, anything in the archives re Collinson's daughter Mary and her husband John Cater, I guess you pronounce it?
Not that I know of. There was something from, I think, Peter Collinson's son. There was let me have a look actually on the description. But in fact, one of the first letters actually that I came across was from his son. So let me just have a quick look. I can probably get that out as well. Just bear with me.
I mean, there's a further question from the same person saying, Collinson in Hortus Collinsonian, I guess, mentions visiting Cater's grounds in Beckenham and left his books to Cater. But I don't know if that rings a bell with you.
I'm not sure as well. Sorry, can you repeat that? It was...
No, whether you've seen any mentions of visiting Cater's ground in Beckenham and the fact that he left his book to John Cater.
Not that I recall, I'm afraid. Yeah, but this letter here is from C.S. Collinson, so I think might have been Peter Collinson's son, to someone called Lambert, and he's basically praising Lambert for continuing Peter Collinson's legacy, and he's offering correspondences and manuscripts to him for his research. So that's the only item that I've been able to find in this collection that relates to someone else in Collinson's family.
Okay, thank you, Luke. There's another question about his network. If it's easy to pull up your screen again, could you possibly show the first slide? So the first document that you had out, and talk more about the to Philadelphia. And talk more about Collinson's relationship to Benjamin Franklin.
Okay, let me just see if I can find that. There we go. I might just need to zoom that out a little bit. There you go. So sorry, could you repeat the question again? That was...
Yeah, so it was just if you could talk a little bit more about Collinson's relationship to Benjamin Franklin.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly how they met, but I am aware that I think Collinson had looked at Franklin's paper on electricity, and because he was in contact with Sir Hans Sloane, who I think was in charge of the Royal Society at that time, he was able to basically help get Franklin membership into that society. That's as much as I can recall at the moment, I'm afraid. But if, by all means, if you want to email us and if you have any further questions, I'm sure we'd be happy to do a bit more research for you and provide you with some more information.
That's fine, thanks, Luke. There's a couple more comments about the greenhouse.
Yeah.
Someone says it looks like the path under the floor of a hippocaust, and then Charles Nelson says floor or flow possibly are the ducts built into the back wall through which the hot air from the furnace flowed. So not shells, but ducts. And there are plans for such greenhouses as in many early 18th century sources. So thank you. That's
cleared that up. Yeah.
yeah. So a few more questions. How did the Linnean Society get these materials, and are they complete, quote unquote?
Well, it's interesting. I was trying to find out how we got these materials, and I was hoping that they might appear somewhere in our donations books. So we've actually got an ongoing project with one of our volunteers who has been cataloguing the contents of these donation books. Unfortunately, I've not been able to find it, but we haven't actually finished this project yet, so it may well appear somewhere else in one of the books that's yet to be catalogued. In terms of whether this is a complete set, technically, I don't think it is, because there was an export bar on some material that was, I can't remember where this material was originally, but it was some work belonging to Mark Catesby, and I think a third Commonplace book belonging to Peter Collinson. And this was last year. I remember reading about this, and I'm afraid I don't know the status of these works and whether they're still in the country or not. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm afraid I don't know about where those are.
No, I don't either. One possible means by which the Commonplace book got to the Linnean Society is that we also have quite a lot of John Ellis material. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Luke, but the two men corresponded, no? And were knew each other, I think. I
don't know off the top of my head, I'm afraid.
Yeah. So it may be that they came with the John Ellis material, but I don't know. That's just a supposition. I have no idea. So further questions. Is there any mention of Cambridge Botanic Gardens and Thomas Martin?
Oh, I'm not really sure, actually. Let me have a look. Martin.
I should say that while Luke is having a look, all his archive records are on our CALM catalogue, our archive catalogue, which maybe Will or Alex can put the link to in the chat. Having said that, we are experiencing a bit of a problem with the archive catalogue at the moment in its formatting, just to let you know that we're aware of it, and that all the paragraphs have been compressed, but you can still search and it's still searchable at the moment.
I'm just having a quick scan through our description for Thomas Martin. I'm afraid I'm not seeing anything come up. I can see the words Thomas and Martin, but not together, unfortunately. So I'm afraid I don't know.
Okay, thanks, Luke. Are any of the Peter Collinson manuscript digitized? I can answer that, Luke, if you want.
Yeah, sure, of course, yeah.
No, they're not, basically. We haven't got them digitized yet, but they might be a contender for a next digitization project, but at the moment they're not digitized, unfortunately. What else? Ray Heaton says promoting Collinson's concerns and involvement re native peoples is very relevant today. Are there any materials that address his relationship to John Bartram?
John Bartram.
So he was in Philadelphia as well.
Yes, I suspect there probably would be. let me see if I can have a quick scan through again. Again, if you want to send the some questions about the book, I can probably have a more detailed look through the book and see if that comes up. So, just see,
Yes,
John. Who's that? Sorry, John
Bartram.
Bartram. Yeah.
Bartram. And Will has put in, thank you, Will, the link to the archives catalogue. So please feel free to go and have a look. I think, Luke, if you could give the manuscript numbers, actually, that would be useful for people for reference.
So the first book is MS 323A, and the second one is MS 323B. That's basically the first and second book that we have. I think this is probably going to take a bit too long to try and find out the information to answer that question. So that's something that I'd be happy to answer in a separate email. If you want to email me again, by all means.
That's fine. I'm sorry, I don't understand. Okay. Anna-Marie Roos, hello Anna-Marie, says the letters from Franklin to Collinson are in letters and papers in the Royal Society. It is helpful. If it is helpful, Collinson did sign Franklin's election certificate. So there you go.
I suspect, yeah, he probably would have, yes.
James Dronnenberg also says Bartram correspondence with Collinson is in a published book. And then there's, yes, there is a book called Forget Thee Not My Garden, which we have in the library, which has also all these letters, and also in memoirs of John Bartram and Humphrey Marshall. Thank you for all these comments. Diego Pirillos asks, is there any evidence about the circulation of Collinson's Commonplace books amongst friends, colleagues, patrons, or were they made just for personal use? Because of course, Commonplace books used to be circulated.
Not that I'm aware of, I'm afraid. I would have thought it was more like a sort of personal thing, but I wasn't aware that Commonplace books typically were used or sort of circulated. I'm afraid I don't know myself, but I think that you're coming in actually later this week, so I'm sure we could have more of a conversation about that. I know we've got a visitor coming up, so I suspect that might be him.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you, Luke. There's a couple more comments that the word on the greenhouse plan is flues, FLUES, the heating flues on the back wall of the greenhouse. So maybe something to check.
Right. Thank you.
Luke.
That's good to know.
And I think that's about it. So I might just give it.
There's a question about any correspondence with Mark Catesby. From David Elliott. He asks, are there any letters to, from, or about Mark Catesby?
Let's have a look. A quick look on here.
Some of the letters have been copied in the Commonplace books, haven't they, Luke?
Yes, I think they have. I'm just seeing if I can find an example of one. Apologies, I'm just having a quick scan through our description again, just to see if it comes up. No, I'm sorry, I'm not really seeing it actually at the moment. I think that might be something I'd have to look into a little bit more, I'm afraid. It's not coming up immediately on the description.
That's okay. It may be that that those letters aren't in the Commonplace book. If you didn't list them, then they might not be. Okay, there's another comment from Ray Heaton. We have the conference on Indigenous people and conservation coming up. Padma, I don't know what that's about, but you will.
Yeah. This is the Royal Anthropological Institute conference that's in the last week of October, and we are co-organizing this with them. Thanks, Ray.
Okay. And I think that's it in terms of questions, unless anyone else has another question. You can either type it or or raise your hand. While I'm waiting to see if there are any other questions, and I should have done this before, our next Linnean Lens will be on the 23rd of November, and Dr. Mark Spencer, who is our honorary botany curator, will have a look at the annotated copies, the Linnaeus's own annotated copies of the first edition of Species Plantarum 1753. And that's on Tuesday, the 23rd of November, and all the details are on our website. And I think that's it for questions, Luke. So many thanks, Luke, and many thanks for everyone who, oh, hang on, someone's got their hand up. Padma, I think Ray has his hand up.
Yeah, I've allowed him to talk.
Go ahead, Ray.
I'm not sure if that was by mistake. Ray?
No, okay. We'll leave it there. Thank you, Luke, and thank you for everyone for coming, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.